The scarlet veil drifted silently against the black sheet of stars, a massive, rust-laced auction barge orbiting the jagged edges of the Morn wastes. From a distance, it looked like a dead leviathan, half-eaten by time. Up close, it pulsed with a life that stank of money, secrets, and slavery. Kale Rygar stepped through the docking port, with one hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm, and the other clutching a credit chit that barely had enough zeros to matter. The ship's corridors were too polished, too opulent-lined in velvet and velvet. Gold-trimmed alloy panels, like a dying emperor trying to mask the rot beneath his robes. Kale wasn't here for the decadence. He was here for a schematics packet ion field cannon blueprints, the kind that could save the outpost on Darwin 6 from collapse when the warlords finally pushed east. He didn't like owing favors, but he'd promised the settlers he'd find something anything. The veil was his last chance. A handler with oiled back hair and cybernetic pupils led him through the main auction hall, where cigars smoldered in crystal trays and perfume clung to the air like a lie. Aliens and humans lounged on recliners, watching as a synth slave paraded. Another girl down a velvet walkway like she was a luxury watch. Kale tried not to look, tried not to breathe it in. But then his gaze caught Dash, paused out she was there. Not on the stage. Not being offered. She stood behind a thick pane of glass in a recessed alcove, apart from the others. No spotlight shone on her. No music announced her place in the lineup. She simply stood, still, silent, her hands folded before her, head slightly bowed. Her skin was pale, almost silver with a bluish cast, as if her veins held starlight. Hair like midnight ink fell in waves across her shoulders, untouched, unstyled. Her eyes were the only thing that moved watching the stage, tracking every transaction. Kale's gut tightened. She wasn't observing. She was studying. He walked toward the glass. Her nameplate read, Model 137, Personal Servitor Class. Emotionally suppressed. Bullshit. Her eyes flickered again. Just a flicker, but enough. Not broken. Trapped. You've got a buyer's look, came a voice beside him, one of the handlers. He wore gold epaulets and a grin that never reached his eyes. She's off program. Not defective, just inconsistent. Beautiful, though. Born and bred for nobles. Once in a decade biosculpt perfection. Kale ignored him. She's not in the auction? She was. Pulled her. Client backed out when she flinched during training. Guess he didn't like her crying in her sleep. The man laughed like it was a punchline. We keep her on ice for specialty buyers. Quiet types. She doesn't eat much. Kale turned to face him. I want her. The handler's eyebrows lifted. You sure? She's expensive. No augments, but the bloodline's verified. She's certified pure. That's not a discount item. Kale unbuckled his satchel, dropped it to the table. One by one, he laid it out his plasma dampener rig. A set of hacked Dominion access keys, the backup drive with 4 years of mercenary ops intel. And finally, his ring. Just a small piece of steel braided with carbon threading, worn at the edges. His father's, his brother's, then his. You're kidding, the handler murmured. No, Kale said. I want her. This is everything I've got. The man hesitated, then shrugged. You just bought yourself a liability, friend. The chamber's lock disengaged with a hiss. The woman stepped through the opening, like she wasn't quite convinced she was allowed to. She didn't look at Kale, didn't speak. Just walked beside him, her bare feet silent on the polished floor. He kept glancing at her, not out of lust, not even out of concern. He didn't know what it was only, that she walked like someone who hadn't been allowed to walk freely in years. As they reached the corridor, the handler called after him with a smirk. You really don't know what you just bought, do you? Kale didn't answer, because no He didn't. But somehow, deep in his gut, he knew it wasn't a person he'd purchased. It was a secret. And secrets had teeth. Asterisk, the inside of the Shatterwake was a far cry from the velvet-draped corridors of the Scarlet Veil. The air was dry, filtered through overworked purifiers, and the lighting was dim, flickering occasionally like it was remembering how to stay on. Kale led her in without a word, moving through the narrow passageway past loose wiring and cargo netting. The ship groaned as it adjusted to their weight-old, patched, but still flying. Just like him, she followed silently, not hesitating, not questioning. Her movements were careful, not unsure but deliberate, like she was stepping through a memory. She didn't trust yet. He motioned toward the narrow chamber behind the cockpit. That's yours for now. It's not much, but there's a bed, storage, and the door locks from the inside. He paused, then added, You can close it if you want. You're not a prisoner. She looked up at him then. Really looked. Her eyes, silver in the overhead glow, held a strange calm, not submission, not defiance, just quiet observation. She didn't thank him, didn't smile. She stepped inside, turned slowly, and closed the door. Not slammed, not clicked, just closed. Kale stood there for a long moment, staring at the metal panel, as if it might somehow explain what the hell he'd just done. The hum of the engines vibrated faintly through the soles of his boots, steady and constant, familiar. He ran. A hand through his hair and turned toward the cockpit. He should have felt accomplished. He'd gotten what he came for. A person, no, not a person. A woman, someone no one else had seen as more than property. And he'd spent everything, every credit, every tool, even his father's ring. Not for a weapon, not for glory. For her, but why? He dropped into the pilot's chair and stared out at the void. Stars scattered across the black like spilled ice. He told himself it didn't matter. She was safe now. Out of that place. That was enough. But at WSN single quotes T, not an hour passed. Then two. He tried to eat, but the protein ration tasted like ash. He tried to sleep, but dreams kept dragging him backward. Sierra's voice calling out. The static of comes too late to save her. The flame-lit sky above Darwin's Fall. Sound pulled him from the spiral. The soft whisper of bare feet. He turned. She stood in the doorway again. Hair loose now, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore one of the ship's spare utility tunics, far too large for her slender frame. Sleeves rolled clumsily. But she wore it with purpose. She held a mug. He blinked. You found the dispenser? She nodded. The interface was old, but functional. Her voice was soft, clear, not robotic. Musical in a way that made him feel like he was hearing a voice that had waited years to speak. Kale gestured to the seat across from him. You can sit. She did. For a while, they sat in silence, the only sound the occasional creak of hull, and the distant hum of systems. Finally, he asked, Do you have a name? A pause. Then. Model 137. That's not a name. Another pause. Her fingers curled around the mug, not drinking, just holding the warmth. They called me Arlen. Once, she said. Her voice barely more than a breath. Before. He nodded slowly. Arlen, he repeated, letting the words settle between them. I'm Kale. Her eyes met his. And for the first time, she smiled not fully, just the edge of it. Like it had been hidden behind years of dust and sorrow, waiting for the right moment. You said I wasn't a prisoner. You're not. She studied him. Then what am? He exhaled. That was the question, wasn't it? I don't know yet, he said honestly. But you're not theirs anymore. And that's a start. She nodded, set the mug down. Ben stood. I'll fix your hydraulic pump, she said. He blinked. What? You have a pressure variance in the port side system. I heard it when we docked. If it's not corrected, it'll blow mid-jump." He stared. She didn't wait for approval. She turned and walked toward the engine bay, like she belonged. "Der dot can maybe, somehow." She did. He sat back slowly, something strange stirring behind his ribs. She wasn't broken. She wasn't helpless. She was waking up. And God's help anyone who tried to put her back in that glass box again. Kale found her crouched beside the port side pump, sleeves rolled past her elbows, hands slick with hydraulic fluid. She worked fast, clean, like someone who didn't have to think about what she was doing, only remember. He leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, watching the faint flicker of concentration cross her face. Every motion was precise. Her expression remained neutral, but something in the set of her jaw told him this wasn't just maintenance. This was reclamation. He didn't speak, didn't interrupt. Just watched until she finally sat back on her heels and wiped her fingers on a rag that had seen better decades. "It's stable now," she said quietly. "Should hold through your next few jumps. You are right to be worried." Kale stepped forward, crouching beside her. "Where'd you learn to do that?" She didn't answer right away. "I was stationed on a research freighter for a time. Part of my conditioning included system familiarity, basic tech protocols. I wasn't meant to fix, I was meant to understand just enough to serve whoever did." "You were never meant to be you," he said quietly. That gave her pause. She turned, and for a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Hers weren't blank like they'd been on the Scarlet Veil. They weren't defiant either. They were searching. "Is that why you took me?" she asked. "Because you saw something broken you wanted to fix?" "No," he said, voice low. "I took you because I saw someone who hadn't been given a choice. And I couldn't walk away from that again." He stood, reaching down to offer his hand. She looked at it, hesitant, then took it. Her grip was firm, too firm for someone who'd been labeled emotionally suppressed. She pulled herself up and followed him back toward the galley without another word. Later, Kale sat at the small metal table, chewing through a protein ration, while Arlen remained across from him, untouched meal in front of her. Her fingers played with the edge of the plastic tray, tracing the raised numbers stamped into its surface. "You don't have to eat if you don't want to," he said. "I'm not sure if I want to," she answered honestly. "I've never made that decision before." He swallowed the last of his bite, watching her carefully. "When's the last time someone let you choose anything?" She looked up. "When I was 8, she said, after a pause. "I chose to paint the stars. Above my bed, my sister gave me the brush. I wasn't supposed to." They removed the mural the next morning and transferred her off station. There was no emotion in her voice, but her fingers had curled into her palm. Kale didn't ask about the sister, not yet. He only nodded. "Paint them again sometime, wherever you want." "I don't own anything," she murmured. "Not even my name. You do now." Silence passed between them. But it wasn't the hollow silence of strangers anymore. It was the kind that waits for something new to grow. Finally, Arlen picked up the fork, took a bite, chewed, swallowed. "It's terrible," she said flatly. Kale barked a laugh, unexpected and sharp. She blinked, surprised, and then just briefly smiled again. It was small, but brighter this time, like the first crack in a frostbitten window where sunlight finally pushed through. He pushed back from the table. "Come on. There's something I need your help with." She followed him down to the hold, where crates were scattered beside a wall terminal blinking a low battery warning. Kale opened a case and pulled out a sealed metal box. Inside was a worn toolkit and a small black velvet pouch. He opened the pouch, revealing a dull gray band smooth, unmarked, shaped like a ring. "This belonged to my family before everything went to hell," I used to wear it around my neck until I traded it away. For you. Her gaze flicked from the ring to his face, unreadable. I thought I lost it for good, he said. But thee? Dealer tossed it back into my pack at the last second. Sighed I'd need it more than he did. Guess even bastards get sentimental. She studied the ring and met his eyes. Why tell me this? Because I don't want you thinking you're some debt. I regret. You're not a mistake, Arlen. She was quiet for a long time. Ben said softly, Do you believe I'm real? What? They said I was made to serve? That anything I felt was just malfunction. If I felt pain, it was programming corruption. If I cried, I was broken. If I asked questions, I was dangerous. So I stopped asking. I stopped everything. He stepped closer. You're not broken. You don't know that. I don't have to. He said, You fixed a system I gave up on. You chose to sit with me. You chose to speak. That's all I need. Arlen turned away then, not in rejection, but in protection, like she didn't know what to do with the way his words landed inside her dot as she walked toward her quarters. He called out one more thing. She paused. I'm plotting a course for Verrett's Hollow. They've got a clean registry hub there. If you want, we can get you a real ID, something that's yours. She turned just enough to glance back. Can I keep my name? Of course. He said, It's yours now. She nodded once, then disappeared behind the sliding door. Cale stood there for a while, staring at the empty hallway. His hand dropped to the ring in his palm. Cold, heavy, solid, just like her dot, and for the first time in years, the weight didn't feel like regret. It felt like gravity pulling him toward something real. Asterisk. The approach to Verrett's Hollow was cloaked in murky clouds and sensor-scrambling interference. A half-dead mining colony termed Joker's Port. It floated above a cracked moon like a broken tooth in a star-scarred mouth. The place reeked of old circuitry and older debts. Cale hated it, but he trusted it. Just enough dot, the shatterweight touched down with a stuttering lurch and a groan from the venting hydraulics. The moment the ramp dropped, Cale felt it in his spine, that buzz. Not electricity, not gravity. Tension. The kind of tension that only builds where laws are suggestions and mercy costs extra. He turned to Arlen before disembarking. She wore the same oversized tunic, sleeves pushed up, collar pinned neatly. The old slave collar was gone now, disassembled in pieces back on the ship. But Cale still caught her fingers brushing the spot where it used to rest, like her skin hadn't forgotten. You don't have to come, he said. I'm not staying behind, she replied. That settled it. They moved together through the corridor. Side by side, people stared. Some because of her pale skin, silver eyes, the kind of beauty that didn't look earned, but engineered. Others stared at Cale, warily, like he was escorting a grenade without the pin. He kept one hand near his belt, the other relaxed, pretending not to notice the eyes. The registry hub was built into an old ore processor, now hollowed out and full of flickering consoles and salvage tech. A low-level tech broker named Silex owed Cale a favor. A messy skirmish on Varn sector had left Silex alive, limping, and in Cale's debt. That favor was about to be cashed in. Silex grinned when he saw Cale. I heard you went broke buying a woman. Cale didn't answer. Arlen didn't blink. Silex single quotes grin faded. Cale pulled out the data tab with the clearance codes. I want. Her ID burned, wiped from every registry. We're not asking. Silex whistled low. That kind of cleanup draws attention. Dominion tags like hers are encrypted at a biosig level. You'd have an easier time faking your own death. I've done both, Cale said. Arlen stepped forward. I write the scrambler myself. I know the coding structure. I just need access. Silex blinked at her like a servo unit had just talked back. "I was there when they wrote it," she said calmly. "You really think I didn't memorize the structure of my own prison?" Silex hesitated. Then he stepped aside. "Fine, don't. Melt my console." She sat down and connected the interface. Her fingers moved fast, deleting tags, rewriting DNA hashes, encrypting new ones with logic puzzles designed to outlast scanners. Her eyes glinted like steel under soft light. Kale watched, jaw tight, not with worry, but with awe. She wasn't just freeing herself. She was erasing their whole dot. An hour later, it was done. Arlen stood, arms crossed, breathing shallow. Silex glanced. At the console, it's like she never existed. "Good," she whispered. They left before anyone could change their minds. Back aboard the Shatterwake, Kale locked the hatch and turned to her. She stood in the middle of the hold, like she was still waiting for something to fall on her. "You okay?" he asked. She looked at him slowly. "I don't know what I am now. You're Arlen." She tilted her head. "No, I mean if they don't own me, and I'm not hiding, and I'm not obeying. What's left?" He stepped closer, but not too close. "Whatever you decide to be." Her eyes searched his. "And if I decide to be something dangerous? Then I hope I'm smart enough to stand beside you," he said. Silence. Then, softly, "I remember how it felt the first time I broke protocol. It was over something small, a question. I asked my overseer why the stars had colors. He told me my voice wasn't meant for curiosity, only comfort. That night, they reset my behavior tree. I woke up empty." Kale's hands clenched. "I'm sorry. Don't be," she said. "Because I remember how it felt to get it back. One spark, one flicker of me. You didn't give me freedom. You gave me room. That's what they never did." Kale didn't know what to say. He just nodded. They sat on the floor of the ship that night, beside the navigation panel that still flickered every time someone leaned on it wrong. She talked. Not everything, but more than ever before. About her sister. About the painting. About how sometimes the darkness felt safer than the light, because it didn't expect anything from her. Then, just before she stood to leave, she looked at him and said, "You told me I wasn't a prisoner, that I could leave any time." He nodded. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small broken chain, the last remnant of the collar. She dropped it into his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." Kale stared down at it, heart stuttering. But, before he could respond, the ship's alarm shrieked once, a sharp ping from the comms board. Not a message. A trace. Dominion coded. Arlen turned, eyes flashing cold steel. "They found me." Kale was already at the console. "No, they found us." He looked back at her. And for the first time, she didn't flinch. She smiled, cold, ready. "We don't run anymore," she said. And he nodded. They weren't fugitives now. They were flame and fuse. And someone was about to learn that freedom had teeth. The Shatterwake trembled under Kale's boots as he fired the engines into a low-burn drift, sliding the ship into the cover of a nearby debris, field-twisted hulls, and forgotten satellites spinning slowly in the dark. Outside, Dominion tracer. Pulses lit the void like flares in a graveyard, sweeping for signs of rogue signatures. He killed the beacon, dampened the comms, and cut the main drive. The hum faded, and silence pressed in. Kale's heart pounded, but his hands were steady. He turned toward the center hold, where Arlen stood like a statue wrapped in steel. "They're tracing a Class Red asset," he said. "Tag was scrubbed, but something else gave you away. Maybe a neural flare. Maybe an old beacon tied to your biorhythm." Arlen didn't answer right away. Her silver eyes had gone colder, focused, calculating. She wasn't afraid. "I knew they'd send someone," she said. "But I didn't think it would be him." Kale's jaw tightened. Who? Commander Vane. He ran Project Lissari, overseer of high-level servitor experimentation. He's the one who personally signed my reassignment when they deemed me defective. Kale's fingers curled into fists. They called you defective for being human. They called me dangerous, she said softly. Because I loved my sister. Because I cried when they took her. Because I fought the sedatives when they tried to reset me. She stepped closer. He won't just capture me, Kale. He'll dissect me, and he'll erase you just for touching me. Let him try, Kale said. He opened the emergency gear locker. Inside were 2 sealed cases, his last clean sidearm, and a manual transponder Kale hadn't used in years. He tossed her the weapon. She caught it mid-air without hesitation. I need you to trust me, she said. There's a way out. But we have to get to orbit over Sethian's cradle. That's not a way out, Kale said. That's a dead zone. Ion storms, relic mines, no safe nav paths. Exactly, Arlen replied. But Vane's ship thee. Tyros infallible, can't track through the static. I helped design the sensors. I know where the blind spot is. Kale stared at her. You're serious. I told you. I don't run anymore. I plan. They launched 30 minutes later silent. Dark, stripped of emissions. The ship groaned, hull plates rattling as they threaded through the field. The Dominion vessel loomed behind them, triangular and merciless, scanning like a beast-tasting blood dot as they passed into Sethian's cradle. The skies changed green. Lightning arced across the ion storms. Shadows danced along the rings of dying moons. Every system Kale had flickered, then blinked off. Dead air dot, it was working. But that's when the ping hit. Signal locked, Kale growled. They've got a fallback trace. They're forcing a burnout, Arlen said. They're pulling us out of stealth. Kale looked at her. Options? Her voice didn't tremble. Jump now. Emergency wrote. It'll fry the main drive and scatter us across 100 light years, but they'll lose the trace. And us? We land wherever the stars let us. Kale locked eyes with her. Will you marry me? She blinked. What? I'm not asking to own you. I'm asking to build something real. With you. After this jump, if we survive, I don't want to just be a rescuer. I want to be the man you choose. Every damn day. The ship shook. Violently. Arlen stepped close. Palm against his chest. Eyes sharp as blades. Yes, she whispered. Now jump. Kale hit the drive. The ship screen dot stars bent. Light shattered. And the shadowwake vanished into the dark. When Kale woke, alarms screamed and the cockpit glass was cracked, but they were alive. And she was beside him, bruised but smiling. I said yes, she whispered again. He took her hand, pressing it to his lips. They were nowhere. They were together, Doc, and that, for the first time in either of their lives, was everything. Asterisk, the wind was warm here, not recycled air through rusted vents, not the stale hiss of oxygen scrubbers. Real wind. It brushed. The tall red grass across the ridgeline sent it swaying like flame over the black soil. Kale stood barefoot just beyond the clearing, shirt hanging open, a strip of gauze still taped to his side from the crash 2 weeks back. The shadowwake sat crooked in the valley below, half buried in a crater it had no business surviving. Arlen called it a miracle. He called it her doing. She had rerouted the nav core mid-jump, masked their trace, and manually softened the impact burn with repurposed pulse breakers. A move so suicidal, even the Dominion wouldn't think to follow. And it worked. No pings, no ships, no Vane, just this forgotten moon. And her. Arlen moved through the wreckage like she'd been born to rebuild. The skin on her knuckles was scabbed where she'd stripped conduit casings bare with her hands. A solar array stood now near the bow, pieced together from melted panels and spare wiring. The starship's rear held a makeshift hydro system, trickling down into a new tiled reservoir. They had food tubes, clean water, solar batteries, and enough broken parts to build an entire life from scratch. Cale watched her from the ridge, arms folded, pulse steady in his chest for the first time in years. She wore no uniform now. Just a loose tunic and braided pants, sleeves tied up, boots unlaced. Her hair was caught in a knot at her neck, a few green strands trailing loose in the wind. She'd stopped pulling it tight. He took that as a sign. He made his way down the slope, slow and quiet, boots crunching on stone. She didn't turn when he reached her, just tightened a bolt on the array housing and said, "You're limping." "Les, I don't want to keep you waiting." A smile touched her lips, faint but real. Cale reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small ring-twisted metal salvaged from the wreck of their jump coil, buffed until the Dominion crest etched. Into it had worn smooth. She turned when he opened his hand. "You saved my life," he said. "Not just in that jump, not just from the Dominion. You gave me something to hold on to, something I didn't think I'd ever deserve again." Arlen's eyes glistened, but not with tears, with clarity. "You gave me space," she whispered. "Not orders, not expectations, just space to become someone." He took her hand and pressed the ring into her palm. "I don't want to own you. I never did. But if you'll have me, if you'll walk beside me not as a servitor, not as someone freed, but as Arlen, then let this be the start." She stared at the ring, then at him, and she nodded, not once, but twice, one for herself and one for him. They didn't have a ceremony. No stars to witness, no crowd, no priest. Just hands and breath, and hearts that had refused to break for good. That night, beneath the purple sky of an unnamed moon, they lay wrapped in each other's warmth inside. The wrecked hull of a ship that shouldn't have flown. They didn't speak about the past, not the cage, not the commander, not the price it had cost to get here. They just existed together sometime near dawn. Arlen traced her fingers across Cale's chest and whispered, "They'll try again someday. The Dominion. The system." Cale nodded, eyes half-lidded. "Let them." Her eyes glinted. "We'll be ready?" "We are," he said, voice low, pulling her against him. "We're not survivors anymore, Arlen. We're builders." And outside, the sun rose slow and golden over their shattered ship, over a garden of red grass, over the first pieces of a home carved out of fire and will. They weren't running. They weren't hiding. They were here, and free together, the end.